Hello, thank you for joining me for Look, Listen, Link, a guide to compassionate conversations. My name is Leah Szemborski. I'm with Ascension EAP, and I'm happy to be with you today. So let's jump right in. We all go through tough times sometimes. A kind word or caring gesture can mean a lot, but sometimes it can be hard to reach out to a peer who may be distressed because what if we say the wrong thing, or what if we don't know what to say? This session is all about increasing your confidence to offer a compassionate, caring presence to people who may be struggling. And it's really directed to teammates or people on your team at work, but you can use these skills with anyone, family, friends, even people at the supermarket, right? There's no limit to how you can use this information. Our objectives, we're going to discuss the intention behind Look, Listen, Link and that model, what it means, and why we use it. Define the Look, Listen, Link steps and describe strategies to initiate that response with your peers, teammates, or anyone. So here's a quote. The oldest medicine in the world is love and compassion. And think about the hardest, most difficult times in your life and how people treated you, for better or for worse. And I hope you'll agree with me that when I've gone through really hard times, the love and support that I felt from others meant more to me than anything else. And I hope you've had some experiences like that too. And this is our opportunity to offer that love and compassion to other people. You're probably familiar with stress if you're a human being, right? And here's just a quick breakdown of some of the symptoms that people might be experiencing when they're overly stressed or experiencing trauma even. There's different types of symptoms that we might experience. So for example, the physical symptoms might be agitated, jumpy, restless, that fight or flight system is activated. You're always just kind of on edge, but then it's difficult to relax and go to sleep. So then you might feel lethargic too, like you have all this energy, but you also don't have any energy. Physical ailments, the body keeps the score. If you're overwhelmed and burnt out and stressed, your body starts to have more inflammation, more pain, more illness or injury, difficulty sleeping. So that leads to fatigue and exhaustion. It also affects our digestion, no appetite, nausea, or some people eat more and gain weight. People become detached or withdrawn because they just don't have the energy to do it today, so leaves me alone, low motivation. Mental, difficulty concentrating, right? Our brain is always worried about the stress or the threat. Actually, when that fight or flight system is activated, it changes the way that our brain functions. So you're looking more for threats and for stressors rather than concentrating on the work that you need to do or the report that you need to write or the patient that's in front of you. Causes memory problems. You might become preoccupied with patients or people that you care for, whatever your job is. You know, we know that compassion fatigue is becoming worn down from caring for others. So whether that's students or colleagues or family members, right? It's overwhelming sometimes. Intrusive thoughts about situations that have happened, you can't get it out of your brain, you just can't stop thinking about it. A lot of people say that their mind races, and even sometimes flashbacks or nightmares about things that have happened that are directly indicated in your dreams, like you're reliving the experience, or it could just be you're going through a lot of stress and you notice that there's been an increase in nightmares lately. Either way. Emotional symptoms, feel vulnerable, anxious, afraid, wide mood swings. You know, maybe you feel good for a minute and then something happens and you just lose it, right? Angry, resentful, guilty, sad, reduced empathy. You're barely hanging on yourself. How can you have energy for somebody else to care about their situation when you can just barely get through your own day, right? Reduced empathy. And sometimes thoughts of self-harm or even death. Spiritual symptoms, difficulty finding joy. If a person is a person of faith and they believe in God or higher power, some kind of benevolent force, maybe they start to question, is that even true anymore? They lose hope. How can things ever get better? Why does it matter? What does it mean? And then relational, social withdrawal. Again, you just don't have it in you to care for other people when you're struggling yourself. Excessive blame, either towards yourself, I shouldn't have, I should have, what's wrong with me? Or blame towards others, they shouldn't have, what's wrong with them? And sometimes poor boundaries, we give too much or we become so rigid we don't reach out or maintain healthy relationships whatsoever. So hopefully you can identify if you are experiencing some of these things, and hopefully not all of them. You know, this is a continuum or a spectrum that when you start to feel some of these things, you say, whoa, I need to take a step back and take care of myself so that this doesn't become overwhelming. Sometimes we're thrust into things without a choice when we experience illness, injury, trauma. We can't necessarily take a step back from that. You just have to deal with it and walk through it. So hopefully you can recognize these signs and symptoms in yourself when they come about, but also being intentional about paying attention to the people that we work with, that we live with, that we love, that we care for. And are they experiencing some of these things? What can we notice in other people? The look, listen, link model is making a connection. It's simple. It's comforting someone who's in distress, helping them feel safe and calm, assessing their needs and concerns, protecting them from further harm if possible, providing emotional support, helping to address immediate basic needs, and helping them access information, services, and ongoing support. Because let's face it, we can't be the be-all, end-all for anybody. We can't be their only source of support. So yes, you can offer that caring, compassionate presence, but when you walk away, who else can they rely on? Who else can come around and support them? So this is just kind of an overview of the model, and we're going to be talking about these things in more detail. A look, listen, link response is not something only professionals do. I'll leave that to the counselors, other social workers. Anybody can do this. It's not professional counseling or therapy. It's not asking someone to analyze what has happened to them, probing them for details, pressuring them to share feelings. Talk about it. It's good for you. Come on, just talk about it, right? That's not always helpful. It's just being present, being open, being willing to have conversations with people when they're struggling. There are some common themes in helping, and this look, listen, link model is derived from many different models of helping, and we just kind of pulled together the best ideas. But there are some common themes across the board. 5 principles of psychosocial support: ensuring safety. Safety is number one. If the building is falling down, we need to get out. If your leg is bleeding profusely, you need to get that wound stitched up, right? So safety comes first. And then, okay, once we're safe, how do we de-escalate? How do we promote that sense of calm? Promoting self and collective efficacy. Everybody has strengths, they have abilities, they have hope, they have resilience. So what is it inside of them that you can capitalize on to help them through this situation? Helping them to recognize those things in themselves, and also recognizing that as a group, as a team, as people in relationship with others, we can help each other. And so pulling that out too. Promoting connectedness and promoting hope. Sometimes people feel like, I will never get out of this. Life is meaningless. My circumstances are terrible. There's nothing anybody can do. And when a person loses a sense of hope, that's kind of when, their life becomes precarious. So, but there's always hope, always. As a counselor, I believe that with every fiber of my being, that there can be a happy ending. You can get through this. Things can get better. And there's actually some research that shows that when people come to counseling without hope, the counselor's hope can be paramount in helping bring that person out of that hopelessness. If the counselor says, I believe you can do it. I believe that we can get through this together. I believe things can be different for you. That hope in the counselor kind of rubs off on the client. And so I know you're probably not a counselor, but your hope can be crucial to helping somebody else. Not that you're giving unrealistic assurances, like, I'm sure that everything's going to be great, right? We don't always know that, but we can get through it, right? So the look, listen, link, response. Look, what's going on? As I mentioned, safety first. You need to attend to emergencies. Don't call EAP if somebody's, gushing blood. Call 911. Who needs help? Who is the people who are directly impacted? Who are on the front lines? What are their immediate needs? And what are their emotional reactions? So sometimes you're not necessarily attending to a traumatic incident or something like that where there are injuries or illness. Maybe it's just kind of a long-term chronic stressor in your workplace, in the world, whatever, and people are just, they're reacting to it. They're not doing well, they're struggling. So looking around at what's going on, who needs help, who's having emotional reactions, what are some of those symptoms that we talked about, who's experiencing those, where do we go first? Just looking around, taking an assessment of the situation. And then listening, the helper's approach. If you're going to talk with a coworker, actively listen to what they have to say. Don't think about what you're going to say and drown out the sound of their voice with your own thoughts, right? Just be very present and take in what they say. Accept their feelings, even if you don't agree. Maybe they're really mad at this coworker and you know something about the situation. You realize that coworker didn't do anything wrong. Your feeling of being angry is invalid, right? Nope. Feelings are not invalid. It's okay if they feel angry, accept that that's how they feel about the situation. And that's okay. Feelings are okay, no matter what they are, as long as we can manage our feelings appropriately so that we don't harm anybody else because of our feelings. Maintain a calm demeanor because our frontal lobes of our brain are wired to match the emotion and the intensity of other people. So if somebody else is frantic, you might find that you're starting to get frantic too. And just de-escalate and maintain that sense of calm. You're going to rub off on that person, well, then they'll probably start to feel a more sense of calm. Be person-centered. Focus on the person that you're talking to. Don't be distracted about this or that. And find solutions to immediate needs. And we're going to talk about these. Immediate needs are usually very simple things. You know, I used to think in counseling like, oh, it's all this, you know, strategies and interventions and theories, and it is, right? That the professional counselors have a good handle on that. But often, before all that stuff, it comes down to, are you getting good sleep? Did you eat some vitamins and minerals and nutrients today? Are you getting enough water? How about exercise, right? Usually the most important things are the simplest things. And then connect to resources, social support, family members, friends, colleagues, mentors, sponsors. Tackle practical problems. You haven't eaten today. Okay, let's go to the vending machine and get you some nuts or something, right? And then access services and other help. If they have housing needs, if they have financial needs, if they have anything, right? Where do you go for help when people are struggling? And I'll answer those questions for you. So who to approach? People in distress or with greatest needs, but you may not always be able to tell. Sometimes those introverts, right, they're pretty reserved and they don't really show their feelings very strongly. And so sometimes people with very few outward signs are highly distressed. So it's a good idea to attend to those who are clearly in distress, but also check in with everybody on occasion, everybody on your team. How are you doing today? Are you okay? Look for a time and a place to approach. Is it the right time? If they're in the middle of something, right? Probably not a good time. Are they busy or distracted? Do they have time to talk? Are there safety concerns that need to be addressed? And is it the right place? So find a place that's private, free from distraction, so that you don't have any rubberneckers trying to listen in on what you're talking about. And if you realize, like, you know, you just maybe walk by and say, hey, how are you doing today? And they're like, not so good. I'm really struggling. Okay, well, I know we're in a crowded place. Do you want to come to my office and talk more about that? Or let's move off into a corner so we can talk more privately. You know, it's okay to do that. How to approach? What's the right way? What's your relationship? You know, sometimes when people go through tragedy or trauma, we just, as human beings, we want to help. How can I help you? Can I come over? Can I see you? Right? But if you don't have a strong relationship with that person, that might not be the best way for you to approach. It might be more just sending a card, letting them know I'm thinking about you, right? So considering the relationship that you have with the person might determine what kind of response would be appropriate. Start the conversation, ask open-ended questions, not like, are you doing good? Good, right? Yes or no? No, you want to say, how are you doing? Is there anything that you need? Let them have the freedom to answer whatever. So here's some conversation starters. I'm concerned. I've seen some of those symptoms. You know, I noticed that you look a little more tired than usual, or you've been a little bit snappy. Is everything okay? What can I do to help you? And often they'll say nothing, right? But just knowing that you offered can be helpful. And if you can think of practical things that you can do to offer assistance, such as, can I get you a drink of water? Right? That's a very practical thing you can do to help. You seem tired. I heard you say you want to go to sleep forever. I'm wondering if you're okay. Right? Don't ignore those subtle little innuendos that people kind of put clues out there to see if anybody's paying attention. And then active listening. It's crucial. Reflect back what you hear them say. Use their language. So sometimes, I can't even think of an example, but I have a word for something and my client will use a different word. And sometimes it's tempting to rephrase what they say using my word, but I learned in counseling school, try not to do that. Use the words that they use so that you can build more of a rapport with them and they feel like, oh yeah, you really get it, right? Use their language. Maintain a calm, relaxed demeanor. Mirror their posture. They're sitting, you sit. And we often do this without even realizing it, even in counseling. You know, if I do this, put my hand up, after a few moments, I'll notice that my client maybe won't do that, right? We just naturally mimic the body language of the people that we're with. So be intentional about doing that too. Make eye contact as appropriate. In some cultures, it's less appropriate than others. So, you know, use those social cues into what is best for the situation. And use body language and verbal affirmations to demonstrate that you're listening. So, okay, yeah, ooh, right? If I was doing things like that while you were talking, as long as it's not over much and kind of distracting, right? But just, you know, subtle little inflections and to help the person know that, yeah, I'm listening. I'm engaged in what you're saying. Provide validation. It doesn't mean that you agree, but can you take their perspective and understand where they're coming from? And this is empathy, right? So maybe my coworker, like we said, they're really mad at this other person, but you don't think this other person did anything wrong. You can say, wow, I can see that you're really frustrated with that person. It doesn't mean you agree with that feeling or even their perspective, but to just validate it, call it out, you know, put it out on the table. You're frustrated. I can see that. Now is not the time to argue about facts or perceptions. Try to listen for feelings, even if they don't use feeling words themselves. And actually, there's some research that shows that that is an effective way to de-escalate situations. You know, if a person's pounding on the table and I can't believe that, you know, your company would do this to me and what's wrong with you? If you say, wow, you seem really angry. Let's try to get to the bottom of this. You know, even though they didn't say, I'm really angry, you could tell that they were, and you used that word and reflected it back to them. There's some research that shows that, yeah, I am angry. You understand, and it helps to de-escalate the situation. So if you can try to put some feeling words to what they're showing or expressing, that can be helpful. So examples, I hear what you're saying. That sounds difficult. How did you cope? Oh, I can hear the frustration in your voice. And sometimes I say, I would be frustrated too if I was in your situation. Doesn't necessarily I agree, but if I was in their shoes, experienced what they experienced, had the same thoughts, perceptions, yeah, that would make me angry too, right? And sometimes when you join with people like that, they're like, okay, I'm not alone in this. But you might ask questions like, were you scared? What did you do next? What if they don't want to talk? So let's say you're walking through the break room and you see somebody and they just look really upset. So you come over and you say, hey, I noticed something's not right with you. Are you doing okay? And they say, yeah, I'm fine. But you know they're not fine. So you probe a little more and you say, oh, good. What are you doing to cope? And they're like, you know, I just really don't want to talk right now. What would you do? The best thing is to just respect their space. Some people need to just deal with things on their own, right? They need space, introverts or whatever. And it's okay. Give them the space that they need. Don't take it personally, even if they come at you a little snappy or rude. You know, if they're going through a hard time, just give them space to deal with that without taking on, you know, any extra burden. Just be kind, let things roll, and respect their need for space. Be person-centered. Let them direct the conversation and talk about what's important to them. It's okay to ask questions such as, what about when that happened? Or I'm not sure I'm understanding this right. Are you saying, right? So you can ask questions to provide some clarity to the conversation or to help you understand. But if they want to talk about, you know, the childcare issue, that they're really struggling to find childcare, then you don't necessarily want to keep saying, well, tell me what your spouse is doing and how is your, you know, if they don't want to talk about their spouse, then just stick with the thing that they want to talk about. A person-centered approach doesn't put people or put pressure on people to talk about anything. They can talk about what's important to them. So in listening, we find solutions to immediate needs. And like I said, these are simple, like bathroom breaks. Do you know how stressful it is when you have to go to the bathroom really bad and you don't have time or you can't get there? That's stressful, right? Go to the bathroom. That's a simple thing. Eating. People skip meals and that has a huge effect on our stress. Or, you know, they're not sleeping well. or they just need to get outside for some sunshine and some fresh air, or if it's a tragedy, often people need to be close to their loved ones. So letting them leave the workspace and go home to their family if it's something extremely serious. But like I said, those little things. I know one leader said that she keeps snacks in her desk drawer, and people know that it's a free-for-all. If they're hungry, if they need a pick-me-up, they can go in, grab some chocolate, grab a little pack of nuts. And that's just one way that she shows, like, I care about you, and here's a practical need that I can help with. Help them brainstorm how they can get other needs met. So if they're dealing with housing issues, addiction issues, caregiving issues, stress, anything, figure out like, okay, that's a pretty big issue that I can't necessarily help you solve, but where can you go to get that need met or addressed? So things like, it sounds like you need clarification from your supervisor about that process. Are you going to be able to talk to her today? Sometimes just having the information we need, being able to talk to the person we need to talk to can be really helpful. Or maybe calling EAP. It's a benefit, free and confidential. Some people don't know what EAP is all about. Be an advocate for the program. Get people connected to help if they need it. Or another resource is 211, which is basically a clearinghouse for all kinds of resources, whether they need mental health care. I talked about this a lot, but like housing, financial resources, energy assistance, support groups. There's so many things 211 can help with, way more than even I know about. So that's a great place to call if you don't know what you need or you don't know where to start. Call 211. Sometimes it may be appropriate to call together, especially if there is risk of harm. Like if the person said, I'm just going to end it all. Okay, I'm really concerned about you. Let's call EAP together, right? And so we want to offer confidentiality and privacy as much as possible. But when it's a safety concern that might harm themselves or someone else, then confidentiality is kind of out the window. We need to take steps to keep the person safe. So try to do it in a dignified way. Let's call EAP together. I just want to make sure that you're getting the help you need. Or if it's not serious or imminent, just offering information. Did you know about 211? Do you know about EAP? Here, let me give you a card. I hope you'll consider calling them. And then follow up. Say, let's talk again tomorrow, or let's meet again next week. I just care about you and I want to check in and make sure you're doing okay. And sometimes that follow-up means so much to the person, like, wow, you care enough about me that you remembered my situation and you took the initiative to reach out again. That means a lot. So here are some conversation starters. How are you doing? Simple one, right? When people are like, fine. Are you really fine? Right? That's an easy way to start a conversation. When's the last time you took a break? What do you need right now? How can I help you? So here are some things to do. Respect privacy. That is so, so, so important to build trust so that people feel comfortable coming to you. But like I said, there are limits to confidentiality, and that really is only about safety or ethical or legal concerns, of course, but whenever possible, keep it confidential. Sit next to the person or in front of them. You don't want to hover over them. That feels pretty uncomfortable. Consider their culture, age, gender, what's appropriate, be respectful. Be honest and trustworthy. Don't give unrealistic assurances or promises you can't keep. It's all going to be fine. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. It'll work out. You don't know that, right? But you can say like, wow, this sounds really hard. I'm with you. We'll get through this together. How can I help? What do you need? Let people know if they don't want help now, that's okay. Your door is always open. If you don't want to talk, just want you to know that I care, and you can always come talk to me if you want to, and leave it at that. Here's some things to avoid. Sit back, arms folded, kind of a closed posture, looking around, checking your watch, clicking on email. Try not to judge the person for their actions or feelings. It's normal to have your own reactions and emotions to what they're saying, especially if it's a highly charged topic or something you feel strongly about. But active listening is about less of you and more of them, trying to push those aside and just being present with the person. Don't tell them what to do or how to solve their problems. Sometimes you might offer advice, but people don't really like to be told what to do. So if you have some advice, be careful about how you deliver that. So for example, I have a 12-year-old who's very strong-willed. And if I told her, if you would just pick up your clothes every night before you go to bed, you'd be a lot more organized and less rush for time in the morning. But if I told her that, she'll be like, I'm not doing that, right? So instead I say, you know what I do? I pick up all my clothes before the night before I go to bed, so then in the morning I'm like less rushed and more organized. But you can do what you want. And when I leave it open for her to make her own choice, she's more likely to follow my advice than if I tell her what to do, right? So be careful about that. Don't probe too deeply or ask for explicit details. Sometimes that can be harmful to people. If they're not ready to talk about it or they're not emotionally stable enough to kind of dig into some of the gory details, that might be causing more harm. So just stay at the level that they're at. Don't press too much. And don't continue to press them if they don't want to talk, obviously. So here are some things to say. It sounds like that was difficult, frustrating, scary, stressful. Tell me more about that. What do you need? Things not to say. Oh, you should be thankful you got out alive. I don't have a lot of time to listen. What are you trying to say? That's bad, but that's not nearly as bad as what Joe experienced. Let me tell you what happened to him. Or, that's dumb. You shouldn't feel that way. And I know we would never intentionally say these things, but sometimes when we're stressed ourselves, when we're pressed for time, I'm very guilty of number two, especially when it comes to my kids. And they're telling me the story and it's dragging on, and I'm like, just tell me what you want to say, right? They don't feel heard. It's not really good practice. I try not to do that. Things to keep in mind. Don't personalize. If they're going through a tough time, let them own that. Don't necessarily personalize it or taking it on like, why are they being so mean to me, right? Just let that stuff roll. Avoid re-traumatization by using low impact disclosure. So like I said, not everybody's ready to dive into the gory details, and they don't necessarily need to. They don't need to relive traumatic experiences to you so that now, oh my gosh, now you have those images in your brain and now you're kind of traumatized even though you didn't live through it. That's called secondary traumatic stress. It's a real thing. So try to keep things on that low impact disclosure level. Be cautious in humor. Humor can be incredibly healing and helpful. In fact, we know laughter is medicine, but sometimes when the humor is degrading, it can come across as hurtful. So just be careful with that. Wanting to help too much may imply they can't do it on their own. There's actually a book called When Helping Hurts, because we just want to keep giving and giving and giving, and they're like, please stop. Or I can do it myself, or don't you think I can do it myself? Why do you need to handle everything for me, right? So be careful about helping too much. And don't reassure that everything will be okay, but do offer hope. So the bottom line, do no harm while doing your best. And that is the counselor ethical guideline, that even if we can't help as counselors, we're definitely not going to hurt. So keep that in mind. All right, so now we talked about look, listen, link. You can do it. Are you ready? In summary, we discussed the intention behind look, listen, link. It's just a compassionate way to have conversations with people, to help them when they're in distress, to connect them to resources. We talked about the look, listen, link steps. Look for what's going on, be aware who needs help first, checking in with everybody, even if they don't look like they need help, actively listening, being person-centered, putting your judgments aside, and then linking them to help, whether that's just, you need a drink of water, let's go take a walk outside, or let's call EAP. I'm going to follow up with you next week. And then describe strategies on how to do that, like the do's and the don'ts and things like that. So I hope you enjoyed this session. I hope it was helpful to you. Please call or email EAP or visit our website. We are so happy to help. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.